This is lecture 22, part 2. So in this part, we'll be discussing a topic which is the Nyquist stability criterion. The Nyquist stability criterion. So in this course, already we have studied one stability analysis method, that is that Routh-Harvey stability criterion. So in that particular method, we have seen whenever a characteristic equation is given, applying the Routh table, we can say how many poles are in the left half of that S-plane, or how many poles on the right half, or how many on the imaginary axis. So applying that criteria, that is Routh-Harvey's criteria, we can say whether the system is stable or not. That means we can give that answer of stability in absolute scale. That means whether it is stable or not. But if we are interested in to see that the closed loop system is stable, but how much stable? Or if it is unstable, that means what would be the stability margin? So that means the degree of stability of the closed loop system can be analyzed using this particular stability criteria, that is that Nyquist stability criteria. So the difference with the Routh-Harvey's criteria is Routh-Harvey's criteria tells us about that absolute stability. That means whether the system is stable or not. But Nyquist stability criteria tells us it is stable or not, as well as how much stable it is. That means if we give some sort of perturbation, or if we change that gain, then up to how much gain that system remains stable, or after that it would be unstable, but what would be the degree of that stability? That means if we again change that gain, how can we make that closed loop system stable? So the detailed thing can be obtained from the Nyquist stability criteria. So this is a very powerful stability criteria, and it gives us the necessary and sufficient condition regarding the stability of a closed loop system. So for applying this Nyquist stability criteria, we only need to know that loop transfer function pole location and that the frequency response of that loop transfer function. That means it is actually one graphical technique. So let us see. So what is that Nyquist stability criteria? So it actually relates. So let us first draw one closed loop control system, that is, so suppose this is that forward path transfer function G of S, and we have that feedback transfer function H of S. So suppose this is that negative feedback, reference command is RS, and output is YS. So this is that closed loop transfer function, and here that loop transfer function is G of S, H of S. So that thing already we have discussed in case of Root-Lucas technique, Bode plot, because we have seen that means if that loop transfer function is given, then from that frequency response, that means from the Bode plot, how can we have that stability in formation of the closed loop system that can be obtained from this Nyquist stability criteria concept I will be discussing today. So whenever a loop transfer function is given, that is g of s and h of s is given, then from this loop transfer function we can have the pole locations. We can have that information about that poles. That means what would be the poles of this loop transfer function. So if this information we have, and if we know that loop transfer function's frequency response, that means whenever that frequency varies, how that gain and phase varies, if we have these two information, then easily we can say whether this closed loop system would be stable or not. So basically that Nyquist stability criteria, it relates, it means that Nyquist stability criteria relates the stability of closed loop system So this particular concept is very important to the loop transfer function frequency response. So we have already discussed what is frequency response in last 2 and 3 lectures. And loop transfer function pole location. So sometimes it is said that open loop. So open loop means here actually that loop transfer function. So Nyquist stability criteria that relates that stability of the closed loop system. So that means applying this criteria, you will be able to say whether that closed loop system is stable or not. And also you'll be able to say how much stable it is. So with the information of what we need two information, that is the loop transfer function frequency response. So this information we need. Another one is that loop transfer function pole location. So if we have these two information, this one and that one, applying these two information, we'll be able to say whether the closed loop system would be stable or not. So let us discuss, that is what is Nyquist stability criteria. So before that, we need to understand that poles and zeros of the loop transfer function. So let GS is that open loop plant. So it is a rational transfer function. So we are just representing that numerator and denominator. So NG is that numerator polynomial and DG is the denominator polynomial. And suppose H of S is the transfer function, which is the numerator polynomial by denominator polynomial. So then what would be that loop transfer function? Then G of S, H of S. So that would be NG, NH divided by DG, DH. And what is the characteristic polynomial for this particular closed loop system? That is 1 plus G of S, H of S, the characteristic polynomial. So that is 1 plus G of S, H of S. So this characteristic polynomial, so if we just replace that G of S, H of S equal to NG, NH by DG, DH, so you would have that DG, DH plus NG, NH by DG, DH. So from these two expression, and what would be the closed loop transfer function? The closed loop transfer function, that one equal to, we know that is g of s plus 1 plus g of s h of s. So that one, if we just replace it, then we would have that ng dh dh divided by dg dh ng nh. So in Nyquist stability criteria, it is very important to understand that pole zeros of the loop transfer function and pole zeros of the closed loop system. So let us see. So here you can see that this is the characteristic polynomial. So characteristic polynomial, if we just consider this particular transfer function 1 plus g of s h of s, so it has that pole, that is dg dh. That means roots of the polynomials dg dh, that is actually the poles of 1 plus g of s h of s. And here you can see that the poles of the loop transfer function and the poles of the transfer function, that is 1 plus g of s h of s, they are same. On the other hand, you can see the zeros of 1 g of s h of s, that means the roots of this particular polynomial, that is actually the zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s. So zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s are nothing but the poles of, if you look at these polynomials, they are same. The poles of closed loop system. Repeating. So the closed loop system's pole are nothing but the zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s. On the other hand, the poles of 1 plus g of s h of s are nothing but the poles of open loop transfer function. So we can write it here, because this particular concept, this information will be required whenever we'll discuss that Nyquist stability criteria. So the first point is the poles of g of s h of s, g of s h of s. So poles of g of s h of s means this one, that is the roots of dg dh are same as the poles of here, that is 1 plus g of s, poles of 1 plus g of s h of s. And the second point is zeros of, so this is very important, because here this particular concept would be used in the criterion. Zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s, you can see here the zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s is this one. It is nothing but the poles of the closed loop system, poles of the closed loop system. So zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s are same as the poles of closed loop system. So that means we all know that the closed loop system would be stable or not. That means closed loop system is to be stable when all the poles of the closed loop transfer functions are in the open left half of that S-plane. So this particular thing can be described in terms of the zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s, because zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s are same as the poles of the closed loop system. So the Nyquist stability criterion, as we have seen, if we know the loop transfer function pole location. So loop transfer function pole location means, here you can see the poles of g of s h of s. G of s h of s is the loop transfer functions, its poles means the poles of 1 plus g of s h of s. So if we know the poles of 1 plus g of s h of s, and if we know that frequency response of the loop transfer function, that is g of s h of s, its frequency response, then we'll be able to say whether the closed loop system is stable or not. So Nyquist stability criteria is developed based on a particular concept of complex analysis that is called that principle of argument. So now I am just going to discuss what is that principle of argument. So before that, we need to understand that mapping in complex plane. So mapping, so let us understand what is the mapping of a contour. So this thing is actually from the complex analysis, and the Nyquist stability criteria, what we are going to discuss, it is based on this particular analysis. So we need to understand, but I am not going to describe in detail why that type of contour occurs, because if you are interested in, you can see that complex analysis book, and it is very simple. If you just consider what would be that angle contribution, then it can be easily understood that why that contour would be like that I am going to discuss now. So I am not going to discuss in detail regarding that complex analysis. Just I will be giving you what is that principle of argument based on which that Nyquist criterion, Nyquist stability criterion is established. So this is a complex plane, that is that sigma and j omega. So now if we just a contour, say suppose this is a contour, you all know what is that contour. It is a continuous line, closed line. So this is called that contour. This is that contour, and the plane that we have considered, this is that S plane. So now the interesting point is, if we map this particular contour via a function, which function is fs. So it is a function, single valued function, and we are going to map this contour to a plane, and that plane is actually that fs plane. So that is that fs plane means, here if we take that real of that fs and imaginary of that fs, so here that is that fs plane. So if we map this particular contour, mapping this particular contour means what? We are taking just point, all the points here, and just we replace at s. So we will be getting one value here in this particular plane. And it is interesting that, so if we just plot like this, that means we'll be taking a point here, point on a contour, put it here, we'll be getting a value here like this. If we get those values, so from complex analysis we know that in fs plane also we'll be having a contour like this, a contour like that. So what we are trying to understand in this particular result, that means whenever we have a contour in complex plane, and if we map that contour via one single value map function, so that means say suppose fs is that function and this is that fs plane, we have taken that real and imaginary part. So then a contour, again it will be mapped in fs plane as a contour, and what would be the type of this contour, what would be its shape? So it depends on what function we have considered. So here two things we have seen. One is that a contour is mapped. So this result is from complex analysis. A contour is mapped through a function. So function is here f of s. A contour is mapped through a function to another contour in fs plane. And the second thing is what would be the shape of that contour. So it depends on, that means that mapping depends on fs. That mapping depends on fs. So it is very simple result, and this result is from complex analysis. That means whenever we have a contour and if we map that contour via a function, so in fs plane we'll be having another contour and its shape and how, whether it would encircle that origin or not. So because here you can see that this is that origin, whether it would encircle or not, so it depends on this function. So let us see some mapping. That means if we take various types of functions, so then what would be that mapping. So I am just going to show you the fact what happens. So those things can easily be understood if you just consider that angle. So here we have one complex plane, so that is that S plane, and here we have that fs plane, so that is that real of fs and this is that imaginary of fs. So then suppose we have taken a function that fs, we have taken a function that fs, f of s, that equal to s minus z1. So here we can see that there is a 0 and that 0 is at say z1, that is a 0, and suppose there is a contour, suppose there is a contour here, and contour, if you take a particular direction, so here this particular direction we have taken, this is that clockwise direction, and we can see that this contour does not encircle that 0. So if this is that case, so in fs plane and where we have taken that plane fs, that function that we have considered, that is s minus z1, so it has that 0 at z1, and this particular contour does not encircle this 0. So it does not encircle means, you know, that 0 is outside that contour. So now if we map it via this particular function, if we map it, then we will see that in this fs plane again we will be having one contour. I am just drawing it arbitrarily, and this contour in particular direction would be that clockwise direction. That means the direction remains same. So if you take continuously the point like this with the clockwise direction, here you will see that again you will be getting a contour in clockwise direction. So direction remains same and it does not encircle this origin. So that is very important. So that means this is, if we consider this is a function s minus z1, so then this contour will be mapped in fs plane with another contour with the same direction, but it does not encircle that origin. So let us see the other cases. So suppose we have that a contour like this and its direction is that clockwise direction, and we have taken a function f of s that is 1 by s minus p1. So that means it has a pole, and suppose this pole is here, and we can see that this contour does not encircle that pole. So if this is that case, then if you just map it via this particular function, so you are mapping via this particular function, so what would be that contour? So that contour will be along the same direction. That means it would be in the clockwise direction and it does not encircle that origin. So that means we have seen in the S plane, if we consider a contour that does not encircle any pole or zeros of that function, the direction of that contour remains same in the Fs plane and it does not encircle that origin. So this is that result. Then let us see the other cases. So suppose we have that sigma j omega, that is that S plane, and we have taken a function. So suppose that f of s equal to s minus z1, but here suppose this is that contour, and this contour the clockwise direction, and here you can see the difference is that contour suppose encircle that 0. So now if we map via this particular function to that fs plane, then what would be the plot in fs plane? So this is that real and this is imaginary. So interestingly, we will see that here there will be one encirclement and the direction remains same, but it encircles that origin. So here we can see that the rotation is same and encircles origin. So what is the difference? So the difference with this particular case with this case, so here that contour does not encircle that 0, and here it encircles that 0. So whenever it encircles that 0, you can see that rotation, the direction of rotation remains same, but once it encircles, so then it encircles that origin. So here I am just going to give you a little bit idea, that means why it happens like that. So here you have that origin, and then if you just draw a vector here, and once you are traversing along this contour, then what happens? So suppose you are starting from this point, then you can see that once you are just traversing via this contour, along this contour, the total angle contribution here, it would be 360 degree. So here, when you are mapping via this particular function, so the same thing happens as it is fs plane, so then from here, if you just draw that vector and if you just start traversing along this contour, then you can see that the total angle that you would have 360 degree. So that's why it actually encircles that origin. And in other case here, whenever that 0 is outside that contour, then suppose you have started from here. So then if you just draw a vector here, then you start traversing this loop, then you can see that the vector is going like this, like that, like this. And again, whenever you are traversing like this, then your vector is coming like this, like this. So what happens in this case, whenever you start traversing like that and finally you come to this point, then you can see that if you look at that total angle contribution, so total angle contributions becomes 0. The reason is whenever you are traversing like this, it is giving some angle like that, but whenever you are coming, you are in this particular path, you can see that again angle is going in the negative side, again coming positive side. So at the end of the day, what happens, you have started from this particular point, and whenever you come to that point, then the total angle contributed by this particular 0, it becomes 0. So that's why it never encircles that origin. The same thing happens here. You can see here, suppose you are here and you start traversing this particular loop, that contour, then you can see that whenever you are here, your phasor is vector is like that, then you start traversing like that. So suppose it is going in clockwise direction, angle is contributing in clockwise direction. So if we take that clockwise direction, angle contribution is negative. Then just after this point, then again you can see that angle is going to the negative direction. So that means what happens, if you start from this point and whenever you come to this particular point, the total angle contribution would be, so from here to here, it gives that positive side clockwise angle contribution. So if we take conventionally clockwise direction contribution is negative, then from this particular point again it starts in anti-clockwise directions. So that means that angle contribution would be positive. So that means total clockwise angle contribution minus total counterclockwise angle contribution. So in this case it would be total 0. So that's why you can see whenever a pole or 0 is outside that contour, so the mapped one, that means in plane, it never encircles that origin, because the total angle contribution would be 0. So if it encircles that origin, then what happens, once it encircles that origin, you can see that the angle contribution would be 360 degree. So that's why this particular principle is called that principle of argument. And so let us see what happens. So here actually we have seen if there is a 0 inside that contour, then that directions remain same, but it encircles that origin. So then here let us see what happens. So if we have that one contour, so suppose you have that contour and it encircles that pole. So here actually in S plane, that means in the left hand side plane, it is important whether it is encircling that pole or 0 not, because it is not important whether it is encircling that origin or not. So if Fs equal to 1 by s minus p1 if this is that function, and we have seen that it is encircling that pole. So then what happens? So this is real and imaginary, and right hand side is that fs pole. We can see that once it encircles that pole, just now we have discussed, so total angle contribution would be 360 degree, and now it is in the denominator. So that means if you bring it in the numerator, so that angle would be minus 360 degree. So that means if we take that this is that clockwise direction, so clockwise direction conventionally we take it is negative. So then as it is that pole, so now if you bring it to the numerator, so that minus 360 degree would be plus 360 degree. So how that plus 360 degree will be matched? That means plus 360 means the direction should be counterclockwise. That means we take that convention and it should encircle that origin. So what we have seen interesting point, that means whenever a contour encircle a pole, so in fs plane actually it encircles that origin, but the direction is reversed. You can see the direction. So direction is here clockwise, but here direction is counterclockwise. So this is very important. But in case of 0, it does not happen because it is in the numerator. So that means that angle contributed by this one, if it is positive, it remains that positive. If it is negative, it remains that negative. So in case of 0, that direction of rotation remains same. But in case of pole, the direction of rotation is reversed. So here we can see that rotation is reversed. So rotation is reverse. So rotation is reverse and encircles origin. So now the question is, if there is a function, that has poles and zeros, then what happens? So suppose we have a function. So again I am reminding you, that means what I am discussing, it is actually that principle of argument. So based on that, that Nyquist stability criteria is established. So here we can see that this is and this is j omega. So this is that S plane. So now suppose you have one pole and there is 1 0, and the contour actually encircle this both pole and 0. So then what happens whenever it encircles that poles and zeros? So 1 0 contributes 360 and one pole contributes 360. So they are in numerator denominator. So basically the total angle contribution would be equal to 0. So that means in fs plane there should not be any encircle of that origin, because the total angle contribution is 0, because one pole is there, 1 0 is there. So what happens? There would be a contour with the same direction, but it does not encircle that origin. So rotation remains same. Rotation remains same and does not encircle origin. So this is very important. So now let us see if there is a function which has some extra poles or zeros. So like that, suppose we have a function here, that is that sigma, and this is j omega. So suppose we have a contour like this, we have a contour. So inside that contour, if we take that, okay, we have say two zeros, complex zeros here and here, two complex zeros, complex conjugate zeros, and we have suppose one pole. So then what happens whenever that contour, so contour, when we are considering that contour, the direction of rotation is very important. So do not forget to mention that direction of rotation. So this 0 will contribute 360, this 0 will contribute 360, but this pole will contribute minus 360. So one 360 and another minus 360 effectively would give 0. So we have one extra 0, that is plus 360. So whenever that is plus 360, then we can see that the function, suppose the function, we have taken that function fs of s equal to 1 plus g of s and h of s. So whenever it is 1 plus g of s h of s, this is that function, rational function. So here we can see that here you have that real and imaginary of fs. So this is that fs plane. So now this particular function, transfer function, has two, suppose, zeros and one pole. So mind that we are not considering that whether it is rational or proper, improper, just we are trying to understand that what is principle of argument, because in control systems always you will be having this transfer function which is proper or strictly proper. That means in improper transfer function we are not going to consider, but in this particular case we are just trying to understand principle of argument. So that's why it is improper transfer function, it does not matter. We are just trying to understand how many encirclement would be there in fs plane and whether it would encircle that origin or not. So should not be confused with properness at this particular moment, but whenever we go for that closed loop stability, always this fs or 1 plus g of s h of s, it would be a proper transfer function. So in this particular case you can see that there is one pole inside that contour and two zeros. So one pole and another 0, that means plus 360 minus 360, it would be 0. So 1 plus 360 would be there. So basically that contour, if we map via this particular function, so then that contour must encircle that origin. And what would be that rotation? That rotation remains same, because the rotation is reversed whenever we have a pole, extra pole. We can see that it is reversed. So here the rotation remains same. So here actually if we say that this is counterclockwise rotation, sorry, this is clockwise rotation, so then that would be also the clockwise rotation. So clockwise rotation to clockwise rotation. So then if your function is 1 plus g of s h of s, then what we have seen, how many rotation is there? So here the rotation is 1, and here how many zeros are there? So zeros of fs is 2 and number of pole is 1. So we can write a particular relationship from here. N is that number of encirclement, so n minus n equal to p minus z. So this particular relationship actually holds in this particular case, whatever we have discussed. What is that n, p and z? So this is very important. That is, n is that the number of counterclockwise rotation of contour B. So let us say that this is that contour A and this is that contour B. So this is actually the counterclockwise rotation. So in this case we have taken clockwise rotation. So N is indicated that the number of counterclockwise rotation of contour B about the origin. About the origin. And then what is P? P is the number of poles. The number of poles in this particular case, the function is 1 plus g of 1 plus g of s and h of s inside the. So that is very important, inside the contour A. That is not the total number of poles. So that is that actually how many poles are inside that contour A. So we can see that inside that contour A there is one pole. So you may have another pole, say suppose here. So that means we should not count that one. The reason is that is not inside that contour, that is outside that contour. And then what is Z? So Z is the number of zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s inside the contour A. Similarly, that means how many zeros are there inside that contour, we need to consider that is inside that contour. It is not the total number of zeros. So what we have seen, that means whenever we are mapping this contour from that S plane to Fs plane, and where Fs equal to a function, so this particular relationship holds. And here we can see that, say suppose in this particular case you can see, so you have a pole, single pole, and there is no zero. So whenever there is no zero, here you can see that there is no zero, so z equal to 0 and p equal to 1. So n would be equal to 1. So when n equal to 1, we have taken that this is counterclockwise direction. So that means here you can see this is clockwise direction and it is coming counterclockwise direction about that origin. So this particular relationship holds whenever here for this particular example, you see the number of poles, that is 2. In this case this is 2, and number of the number of poles inside that contour, that is 1, and how many zeros are there, that is 2. So that is 1 minus 2, so then effectively it would be minus 1, and so n is minus 1, and n we have taken counterclockwise direction. If we take minus of that, that would be clockwise direction. You can see this is clockwise rotation. So this particular concept, this particular result is called, so this is known as principle of argument. Very important. This is called that principle of argument. So now the point is, if we are trying to apply this principle of argument for establishing the stability of a closed loop system, what would it be? So first of all, we need to understand what would be the contour in that S plane. It is very easy to understand that. So this is that S plane, real and j omega. So this is that S plane, and you know that means that system would be stable whenever the poles will be in the left half of that complex plane. So then if we take a contour, so this contour is called that Nyquist contour. So if you take a contour like this, so it indicates that the whole closed right half of that S plane. So this is that contour, and you can see the rotation, direction of rotation. I have taken that clockwise direction. So this is called that Nyquist contour. This is called that Nyquist contour that actually encircles that whole closed right half of that S plane. And this Nyquist contour, this is very important, that Nyquist contour should not pass on any poles and zeros of that function. So that means if there is any poles or zeros, then we need to take that contour excluding that poles and zeros. So what we have pointed out here, we have taken a contour in that S plane that covers that whole closed right half of that S plane. So here I have shown by that semicircle. Basically this particular radius is say r e to the power j theta if I represent it in complex plane, and here actually r is tending to infinity, and this theta is varying from plus 90 to 0 to minus 90. So that means it is taking that whole closed right half of that S plane. So now if we take that Nyquist contour, then the point is whether this contour encircles any zeros of 1 plus g of s and h of s, yes or no. Because if it encircles any zeros of 1 plus g of s and h of s that we have discussed at the very beginning, you can see that the zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s, the zeros of 1 plus h of s, it is nothing but the poles of closed loop system. So that means if that contour encloses any zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s, then that system would be unstable. But if it does not encircle that any zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s, that means that system would be stable. So from principle of argument, we have understood that whenever a contour is mapped via one function, that is 1 plus g of s of h of s, this particular condition holds, that is n equal to p minus z. So now if the contour is like this, that encloses that whole closed right half of that S plane, and from principle of argument we have seen that this thing holds, that is n equal to p minus z. So then what happens? So here the mapping is actually 1 plus g of s h of s, or you can say that the mapping would be g of s h of s. So here we need to understand, so this thing we are getting from principle of argument. So from principle of argument. So this particular concept we get from principle of argument. So now we are trying to understand that if we map via g of s h of s, so g of s or h of s, so mapping via g of s h of s, that is important. So if we map via 1 plus g of s h of s, so that means if we have a plane, that is 1 plus g of s h of s, so then this is that origin, This is that origin. But if we map via only g of s h of s, only g of s h of s, that means if the mapping is only g of s h of s here instead of 1 plus g of s h of s, then this particular axis will be shifted to that minus 1 point. So that means if we go for only g of s h of s, then that encirclement would be actually minus 1 point, minus 1 plus j0, because that would be just shifted, repeating whenever the function that we have taken, that is 1 plus g of s h of s, we have seen that origin is that point. So instead of 1 plus g of s h of s, if we take only g of s of h of s, then that encirclement point would be minus 1, because here you can see if this is equal to 0, g of s h of s equal to minus 1. So that's why if we go with 1 plus g of s h of s, this one whole thing, then that encirclement would be 0. But if we go with g of s h of s, the encirclement would be minus 1. That means we need to see whether when the mapping, this mapping would be via that g of s h of s. So if we consider that this is that function, that is f of s equal to g of s h of s, if we map this particular contour via this function, then we need to see whether the encirclement of the contour about this minus 1 j0 point. So if we take 1 plus g of s h of s, then that is with respect to origin. If we take g of s h of s, that one would be with respect to minus 1 point. You may ask why we are interested in g of s h of s or 1 plus g of s h of s. The reason is 1 plus g of s and h of s, that is actually that characteristic equation of that closed loop system, and we are interested in to see whether the closed loop system would be stable or not. So the Nyquist stability criteria actually tells us whether the closed loop system is stable or not based on the information of the loop transfer function and the mapping that we are going to discuss. So next class we will be discussing that what would be this mapping, and here it is clear that the mapping is basically we are trying to map this contour, and here this contour is actually encircles that closed right half of that S plane, and it would be mapped into a plane which is that Fs plane. So here that Fs plane is nothing but that G of S and H of S plane, and then we will see that whether the contour that is mapped in Fs plane, whether it encircles that minus 1 point or not, or if it encircles, how many encirclement is there, and then we will be applying this principle of argument, and from there we can see whether the closed loop system would be stable or not. So this particular thing we will be discussing in next lecture. So today, what in this particular part of lecture, what we have discussed, that means what is that poles and zeros of that 1 plus g of s h of s, and we have seen the poles of g of s h of s are same as the poles of this, and zeros of 1 plus g of s h of s is nothing but the poles of that closed loop system. Then we have discussed one interesting result of complex analysis, that is called the principle of argument, and we have seen that whenever it encloses that 0, then that rotation remains same, but it encircles that origin in Fs plane, and when it encircles a pole, then it it encircles that origin, but that rotation is reversed. And then we have seen that relationship, that is n equal to p minus z, and after that we have understood that why we have to take the closed contour in S-plane that encloses the total closed right half of that S-plane. The reason is this is actually the region enclosed by this contour is that unstable region in case of that closed loop control system. And in next class we will be studying that how this particular contour is mapped in Fs plane, and here Fs plane is that G of S and H of S plane or GH plane. So in that GH plane, what would be that contour? So first thing is how to map it, and second thing is what would be the Nyquist stability criteria. So Nyquist stability criteria would basically comes from this principle of argument. Thank you.